Hello, fellow DMP students. My name is Kristen Yusanovich. I would like to review Chapter 11, Issues Related to Survey Data Collection, out of the Clinical Research for the Doctor of Nursing Practice 3rd edition textbook by Allison Terry. This information will be important to understand as we move forward with our DMP Advanced projects. This PowerPoint creation, notes, and screencast was compiled by Carrie Gerber, Deborah Turpin, and Kristen Yusanovich. We will cover 7 learning objectives throughout this presentation. As we learn to create the perfect survey, including what we need to do to plan the survey, create the content, and even view a sample instrument. Introduction to survey data collection. Surveys are useful tools for a variety of reasons. They can produce a lot of information in a short amount of time and usually at a very low cost. Information from survey participants can often be generalized as well. Researchers can gather several different types of information from survey participants. One type of information would be factual information. Factual information would be information such as personal history or demographic data on a survey participant. Another type of information gathered is a perception. Perceptions are statements about what the respondents think they know about the world. A third type of information that can be gathered from a survey is an opinion. These are judgments about events or specific objects. A survey can also capture attitudes, which are the respondents' basic feelings about events, ideas, or objects. And last, behavioral reports can be captured using surveys. These behavioral reports include how a respondent may choose to act in a particular situation. Using a survey means we are making inferences with a smaller group about a larger population. So if a survey is going to work for your advanced project, the researcher will go through these 14 stages to begin planning the development of the survey. Step number 1 is conceptualizing. During this stage, the researcher decides on the purpose of the survey, develops a hypothesis, specifies concepts that will be used, and decides how these concepts will be measured. Step number 2 is survey design. The researcher will determine how the survey will be implemented and what sample will be used. Step 3 is instrumentation. The questions for the survey are determined in this step, and the instrument is formatted. This is an important step because we want to capture the correct data. Step 4 is planning. In this stage, the budget is planned, materials that will be needed are outlined, and any assisted personnel that will be needed are requested. Step number 5 is sampling. The researcher chooses who will be interviewed. Step 6, training and briefing. In this step, the interviewer or interviewers are trained so that they administer the survey the exact same way every time it is implemented. Pre-testing is step number 7. The survey is administered to a small group of people to make sure the instructions are easily understood and the survey items produce the response desired. Steps 8 through 14 are actually administering and collecting the data. Step 8 is surveying. The survey is administered to the target population. Step 9 is monitoring. The surveyor reviews records of contacts and refusals, and make sure the correct people are being contacted to participate. Step 10 is verification. Follow-up contact is made to make sure surveys are being returned. Step number 11 is coding. The data is then converted to numeric terms in order to be processed. Step 12 is processing. The data is further organized in order to be analyzed. Step 13, analyzation. The data is analyzed using statistical tools so conclusions can be drawn. And finally, step 14 is reporting. Reporting the findings which are summarized into research reports. As part of follow-up to administration, the researcher should examine the response rate and determine what led to variances in response rates. The researcher should review these 7 questions. How many people were sent the survey? Was a different distribution method used than the norm? Examples would be, was the survey given in person or web-based? How many surveys were returned and how many were not completed? Can a reason for the incomplete surveys be determined? Did the response rate vary by population? Did a different population seem to understand the question differently? What methods were used to increase response rates? Was there an incentive given? Can an extremely high or low response rate be explained? As further follow-up, we want to know the survey yielded the information that we needed to capture for our advanced project. Recruiting the sample for survey research. Researchers frequently have to go through gatekeepers to gain access to research participants. Gatekeepers can be deans of nursing schools when we are using nursing students, or nurse managers when we are surveying nursing staff. The researcher must be prepared to show the gatekeeper that the research is credible and beneficial and will not negatively affect participants. The researcher must then convince subjects that their participation is worthwhile. This often includes offering incentives such as money, prizes, or continuing education hours upon completing a survey. Timing in recruiting subjects is very important. The researcher should approach gatekeepers and potential participants at a time that is most convenient for them. Planning the content of a survey. In order to have a valid survey, we need to discuss the content of the survey next. The survey needs to be easily readable and not contain all capital letters. The survey needs to be numbered and grouped according to subject. You will need to give clear instructions for the participants before they complete the survey. Make note if you are wanting closed-ended or open-ended responses. Open-ended responses can be a better source of information, but more time-consuming for the participant. You may need a pilot test of the survey. You always want to include a cover letter with your survey instrument. The cover letter tells the participant the purpose of the research, the name and contact information of the researcher, how the information in the survey will be used, and identify any benefit or harm the research subject may expect. You also always want to include a consent form before you start the survey instrument. There are two types of sampling that is described in Terry Chapter 11. Random sampling is usually the method used with surveys. This method allows results to be generalized. There are various types of random sampling. One type of random sampling is simple random sampling. In this type of random sampling, participants are chosen by chance. A second type of random sampling is called systematic sampling. Subjects are selected at specific intervals. For example, every 10th person will complete the survey. Stratified random sampling is a specific group is selected from a larger population, and then a random sample is chosen from that group. For example, if you were surveying nursing students as an entire group, then you would select a smaller group in the stratified random sample of specifically only first-year nursing students from the larger group of nursing students. Cluster sampling is the last type of random sampling described. In this type of sampling, there are randomly assigned subjects to a group. The subjects within the assigned groups are then surveyed. Nationwide research is conducted using cluster sampling. Terry Chapter 11 also talks about non-random sampling. Non-random sampling targets subjects within specific groups and is more informal. Purposive sampling is a specific population is selected. For example, it could be a sample derived of pregnant females carrying twins. Convenience sampling is where the sample is made up of those that are easiest to recruit. For example, sending an email and using those who respond to the email. Snowballing. Participants are asked to recommend other participants. The researcher will determine which type of sampling to use based on how much sampling error is acceptable. Sampling error occurs when the sample is not completely representative of the population of origin. Figure 11-1 on pages 148 to 152 in Terry Chapter 11 provides an example of a full survey with open and close-ended questions, including a recruiting script and an IRB-required alternative recruiting script. This example will serve as a guideline as we create our surveys for our advanced projects. Survey research design is usually cross-sectional or longitudinal. Cross-sectional surveys gather information about a population at a specific point in time. Longitudinal studies, on the other hand, ask respondents questions at two different points in time. Cross-sectional surveys can be contextual or a social network design. Contextual designs are sample cases within specific groups that describe the characteristics of the group. Social networking designs are used for gaining information about individuals and organizations and the processes that link them together. Be aware that social network designs require a larger length of time, which may not be available during the length of our DMP programs, our program length. So a social network design may not be warranted for a DMP capstone project. Longitudinal designs are broken down into trend studies, cohort studies, and panel studies. A trend study provides data on the same variables with a new sample of a target population. A cohort study actually studies a specific group of individuals who experience the same significant event within a certain time period. A panel longitudinal study, respondents are surveyed repeatedly to determine how individuals are changing over time. Longitudinal designs, survey research designs, may also not be a great choice for a DMP Advanced project due to the fact that we are under a time constraint to complete a survey and give a finished product in a short amount of time. I hope this presentation has assisted you with the needed steps to prepare for survey research. I think most of us will use some form of a survey with collecting data for our advanced projects. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Thank you for your attention